Hello and welcome to Chapter 1, Role of Public Accountant in the American Economy. Now, Chapters 1 and 2 are two small chapters that I look upon as one chapter. The first two chapters talk about the auditing profession, and then we get into the actual audit and the internal control, etc. So when we start with this chapter, and it is this process that we're going to follow for each and every chapter. When we start with this chapter, let's look at the definition of auditing. Well, auditing is a systematic process of obtaining evidence by an independent party to verify management assertions. What do we mean by that? An outside party, an outside audit firm will come in and look at the financial statements, and then they will give an opinion based on the work that they have done. And in the work that they are doing, they are in the process of collecting evidence to support that opinion. Okay? Assertion versus attestation. Financials are prepared in conformity with GAAP is an assertion. Okay? An engagement in which a practitioner is engaged to issue or does issue a report on subject matter or an assertion about the subject matter is the responsibility of another party is attestation. So, based on the work done, auditors provide an opinion about the overall reliability of the subject matter. Okay? Management is asserting that these financials are prepared in accordance with GAAP. Auditors are attesting. Management obviously wants to present the company in the best possible light. Okay? While the job of the auditors is to ensure that the information about the company's financials is presented fairly. Okay? So there is an inherent potential conflict of interest. One wants to show the best picture, one wants to show the most accurate picture. Excuse me. So that's why you can have a conflict of interest. And so the auditor's job basically is to verify, okay, everything. Professional skepticism is the tendency that an auditor should adopt, not just to accept management's assertion, but to look for evidence. Okay? Without corroborating evidence, you cannot just accept their word for it. And that's what you call an audit, an examination, and attestation. Prove it. Show me the evidence. That's what auditors do. Okay? So your test functions are divided into three categories. An audit, where you provide not absolute, and we'll go over this word again and again, reasonable assurance. Reasonable assurance that these financial statements are presented in accordance with GAAP. Okay? Then you have another one which is called a review. Less examinations, and so you provide limited assurance. And then you do agreed upon procedures like auditing just a particular section of a company, or looking at the retirement pensions and auditing the pensions, that kind of limited procedures, and then you provide the summary of findings. Highest in assurance, number 2, specific findings. Okay? So for audits, let's review this real quick, and then I'm going to try to explain this. So management is asserting, okay, but your job is to verify. There could be misstatements because of errors, lack of knowledge. One very big challenge that I have seen in this profession is not the right people are doing the right kinds of jobs. Okay, and so think about how much time you have spent to get over here, how much accounting you have done, and there's a reason for it. Management biases and deliberate attempt to mislead. Now these things can have a significant impact. If you look at every accounting scandal that has happened, it has happened because of any one of these 4 reasons. Well, scandals happen because of this, but the impact on the economy, the Great Depression, impact on the economy is huge. Doctor makes a mistake, 1 life is lost. Accountants make mistakes, it can have an impact on the economy. Think about the Great Depression. Think about the 2008 crisis. Okay, these things happen, or the Enron crisis of 2001. These things happen because of a reason. The demand for auditing profession is very high because of that. People need, banks rely upon you, okay? Investors rely upon you to make sure that you are verifying what you need to verify. So a loan officer at a bank will loan money only if they feel secure that the company will be able to meet its obligations. If the company is not able to meet its obligations, then they can lose their money. Okay, so the risk that the business may not be able to meet its obligations is a business risk. Okay, and the risk that the business information used to assess the business is not accurate is what we call information risk. You're going to see these kind of questions in your multiple choice, maybe not in chapter 1, but you may see it in chapter 5, chapter 6, etc. as we explore this further. Okay, so as you can see, these challenges are immense and can have a major impact on the economy. We had some subprime crisis in the US market, and so every time you have a scandal or a crisis, the Congress reacts and comes up with a new regulation. So then you have the Dodd-Frank Act. After the Enron debacle, you had the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Okay, after the subprime crisis, you had the Dodd-Frank Act of 2010. Okay, the main purpose was to bring in transparency and accountability. That was the purpose behind the Sarbanes-Oxley Act as well. Okay, but see, you can have as much transparency or as much laws on paper. The question is, are those being followed? Okay, that by itself is very important. Now, the types of audits. Let's look at those real quick. As I said, this chapter is essentially just giving you an overview of what the profession is all about, because we will get into details later. Audits of the company's financial statements are financial audits. Okay, that's what primarily this class will cover. Audits to assess if laws have been complied with, compliance audits, IRS audits, right? Particular segment, like a payroll department or capital expenditure, fixed assets department, accounts payable department, specific operational audits. The new law in 2002 that requires that auditors of publicly traded companies perform an audit that includes providing assurance on both financial statements and effectiveness of internal control. The audit is called integrated audit. Okay, now as you may know, it's possible you may know that in 2002 or prior to that, prior to Enron debacle, CEOs and CFOs did not have to put it in writing that they have verified the internal control and the internal control is working fine. Now the CEOs and CFOs have to provide an assurance that they have reviewed the effectiveness of internal control and the internal controls are working fine. Okay, and so now the auditor's job also, auditors in the United States to perform an audit that includes providing assurance on both financial statements and the effectiveness of internal control. In the past, these financial statements, we have looked at the evidence, looks okay, but no. Now, the internal control or the environment under which these financial statements have been presented is also important. And what are those components of that? We will talk about that in chapter 6 and 7. Okay, so now it's not just that the financial statements are accurate, it's also that the internal control of this particular company is also effective, under which environment the financial statements have been presented. And that's what you call an integrated audit. And the act by itself is called the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Now, the types of auditors: external auditors, internal auditors, GAO, and agents. Let's talk about that. Outside CPA firms, primarily what this class covers, external auditors. Companies, large companies have specific auditing departments within their company also to verify if the information that is reaching up to the top management is accurate. Those are internal auditors. They may do a lot more work than external auditors, but external auditors, as you will learn in this class, cannot simply rely on their work. Audit staff that is used to audit different government agencies, government auditors, and then you have your IRS agents and IRS auditors. Okay, so as I said, a brief overview of the profession, and then you have I have given you a slight history of this particular profession as well. As you go down this path, you will find that there is more and more reliance on internal control. Okay, in the past, ancient days prior to industrial revolution, only if there was a detection of fraud there would be some kind of an examination. Now examination is done after a risk assessment. What are the risks involved? What can go wrong? And based on that, an audit is done, which is the latest one. Business risk approach. What is the risk to this business? Would this business survive if a wrong opinion was given? Would the investors be misled if the wrong opinion was given? Very important. Okay. And as you will see as you read this, more and more auditing standards started getting developed after the Great Depression, what we call the SASs. Okay. Criticism by Congress, increased self-regulation, increased demands for reporting on compliance and internal control. So these things gained its own importance over time. There was more oversight. You can see, as I said, the Dodd-Frank Act we talked about. After 2002, you had the PCAOB, the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, that regulated accounting firms after the Enron debacle. So anytime there's a scandal, the government acts and you have more regulations. And if you don't like regulations, the way you have to look at it is if the industry is responsible, okay, if auditors do their job, maybe you may not have that much regulations. So it goes both ways, okay? And the set of reforms passed that toughened penalties for corporate fraud and establishment of the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board was the PCAOB, was the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, okay? A brief understanding of, or a brief overview of what the public accounting profession is, how it is regulated. It is regulated by the AICPA. Now, small businesses, okay, are more or less regulated by the AICPA, small accounting firms, regulated by the AICPA, the large firms by the PCAOB, okay. What is the job of the AICPA? Establishing standards on SASs, or I have already posted a link for you to review those. Do come up with research and publication, the accounting journals. Responsible for CPEs, continuing professional educations. Okay, they self-regulate the profession and they also oversee the CPA examination. Of course, since 2002, the standard setting and regulation has been taken over by the PCAOB. What is important over here is that the CPA examination, okay, normally it's overseen by the state chapters. So the Illinois CPA Society, they may be overseeing that part to a certain extent. However, the overall conducting of the exam and all that is done by the AICPA. Okay, like in all the chapters, you're going to see questions at the back. I have provided you solutions, and then you have some multiple choice questions that you should do. And hopefully that should help you gain a better understanding as I have discussed in the syllabus instructions. So again, a short chapter. The chapters may be short insofar as the content is concerned, but in some cases short chapters may also mean a lot more practice on specific areas. So don't just go by the length, go by the importance. I would consider each and every chapter equally important. Okay? Thank you very much, and on to chapter 2.